The League of I'm start over here. The League of Women Voters of Oxford, North Mississippi, welcome you to the fourth and final of our 4 series of forums for the 8 candidates for the new position of county judge in Lafayette County. I am Ruby Kelly, the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Oxford, North Mississippi, along with co-president Ruth Odell. I again say you're welcome. The League has conducted many forums over Zoom in the last 2 years, and we have learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. So here's procedures for the evening. First, please remain on mute throughout the forum. Put your questions in the chat and the moderators will ask them to the candidates. Miss Dana Ingenberg is our timekeeper. Dana, if you wave your hands, we'll see who you are. She will be using colored cards to keep the time for the speakers and even the moderators. Each candidate has 10 minutes for an opening statement and 5 minutes for a closing statement. There will be 25 minutes allowed for Q&A. Dana, if you will show the audience, and again the candidates, your cards so they will know how they would look and work. Okay, thank you, Dana. Want to remind you, this is not a debate, it is a forum. Also, just a reminder to everyone, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support specific candidates. We are issue-oriented, and you will see this in the question that will be posed to our candidates. Both candidates have been given an opportunity to complete a bio and questionnaire on the League website called Vote 411. Ruth has put 2 links in the chat. One is our website blog on the issues, and the other is the link that the candidates has placed as their bio, as well as the link for the recording of all our forums. Now I'm going to turn this over to our moderators, Don Mason and Joanne Gabrimowicz, who are both retired professors from the University of Mississippi. So Joanne and Don.
Thank you, Ruby. We want to welcome you all. This is the 4th in the series. When we finish tonight, you will have had the opportunity to hear from all 8 candidates. So this is a great opportunity to participate in what is truly a historic event, which is the establishment of the Lafayette County Court. With that, we will begin. Don, do you have a little opening statement you'd like to make?
Me? No, I just welcome everyone here tonight. I'm anxious to hear what everyone has to say.
Okay, then with that, we go in alphabetical order according to last name. So according to that, Mr. Turner will begin tonight's session with a 10-minute opening statement. Mr. Turner.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good evening to everybody. Tommy, it's good to see you too. Hope all's well with you. My name is Joshua Turner. I was born here in 1977. My parents are Susan and Larry Turner. I have 2 sisters, Hannah and Sarah. I graduated from Oxford High School in 1996, University of Mississippi in 2000, majored in criminal justice and psychology. After college, I went to Jackson and went to law school at Mississippi College, and I graduated from there in 2004. I practiced down there until 2007 when I moved home here. I have tried cases in circuit court, chancery court, municipal court, justice court, youth court, and federal court all over the state of Mississippi. I'm licensed in all state courts, the Mississippi Supreme Court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the United States Supreme Court. Since I came home in 2007, I have tried more cases in the Lafayette County Circuit Court building than any other lawyer. I look forward to answering whatever questions that any of you may have. And thank you again for having us.
Mr. Turner, you have a little more time if you want to avail yourself of it.
Well, I'm kind of wanting to answer y'all's questions, and as
Okay.
far as the questions you guys have, I feel like that's probably more important than me just running my mouth at this time. And I'm
All right.
interested to hear what y'all have.
We'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
Mr. Waller.
I really appreciate you for having me on here tonight. I'll just give a little background on myself, just like Josh did. I was born here in 1968. My parents were Charles and Mary Ann Waller. My dad was Charles Buzz Waller. He passed away last year. I wish he was here to see this, but he's not. My mom still is with us, and she's helping me out on this campaign. My parents, my dad worked for Belt Ford and then ran the Oxford City School bus shop until he retired. My mother retired from the University of Mississippi at the Lyceum's office in the registrar's office. I took a little different path than most of our candidates. When I went to undergrad, I went to Oxford High School. I graduated in 1986. I did undergrad in electrical engineering and then decided to go to law school. When I graduated in law school, it was 1994. Instead of staying here, I wanted to see all the courts from the state. I didn't want to stay home. I wanted to see what everything was out there. Therefore, I went to Harrison County, Mississippi. My first boss was Al Hopkins. And in 1994 was an interesting year for our law system. In 1994, they implemented the Tort Claims Act, which allowed people to sue political subdivisions, school districts, sheriff's departments, anything associated with the government on the state level. We're not talking federal level. So we had state law, but we had no interpretation by our Supreme Court. So my first jobs was, what is the law? And that's what I'm going to bring to the table is I have done more research and briefs than anyone else, and I've done more bench trials. And let me explain bench trial. When you come to tort claims, you don't get a jury. It's bench trial. So therefore, I've researched it, and the law has changed over and over again. My name will be on more appeals to the Supreme Court to interpret the law. As county court judge, to distinguish between our appellate division, meaning our Supreme Court and our Court of Appeals, I do not make the law. I read the law and I interpret the law as it is written. I can't change it. The only person that can change the law is a politician in Jackson or our Supreme Court or Court of Appeals to do a different interpretation. Having said that, now, what I've done since then, I have practiced in every county virtually in the state of Mississippi, except maybe 2 or 3. What I've done, I've been fortunate to be able to practice in different areas. I have practiced, like I just described, defending school districts and political subdivisions and sheriff's departments. I've also been able to represent individuals, such as I got cases right now. I'm representing cotton farmers that did not get paid for their cotton. I am very pro on small business. And here's what's so important about our court is you now have a court that has a cap at $200,000. Previously, you only had circuit court. I describe this court as a mini circuit court just for our county. And why do I say it that way? Look, there is a lot of property owners. There's a lot of renters. There's a lot of elderly people in our county. As you well are aware, Lafayette County is turning into a lot of a retirement county. We're over 50,000 now. And say, for example, if you hire a contractor that does not treat you right, you will be able to get in my court instantly. And because the damages usually are not above $200,000, but you won't have to wait 3 years to get in court. That's very important. That's the civil side. Likewise, and I understand y'all were going to talk more about the court. I was going to mention a few things. Youth court's being brought in. We'll get to that a little bit later, but a youth court is very important because one thing I said, and I've said consistently on every time I've spoken, the horrific thing that happened about, it's now over a month and a half ago out of Tennessee, but it ended up in Mississippi. You had a child at that time go through the youth court system. He had been there over 6 times, but he aged out. When I mean by aged out, he turned 18. Once you age out, then you're in the big court system. But guess what he did once he aged out? He got a gun, shot 7 people, killed 3 people, ended up in North Mississippi. If I'm a youth court judge, which is part of this division, that will not happen. We have so many good programs to help these kids, but they got to be utilized. Our CPS and our DHS are very overworked. My goal is to work with our government, work with our Jackson, and make sure they have the proper tools and the proper staff to help these kids. Because my biggest goal with respect to youth court is they won't see me again when they're 18. We help the problems at the local community. Lafayette County is my hometown. And like I said, I was born here, raised here. I've gone through county courts all over the state. And I'll say it just like this, and I'll end with this. Look, I've seen great judges and I've seen bad judges. And what I've learned from that is I want to be the judge that I will be here forever. And when I'm saying that, it's time to, this is great opportunity for Lafayette County. We have the best opportunity to make sure we can fix the docket for the circuit court. We can help with youth court, meaning we're the youth court judge now. We can help with property owners, eminent domain. Some people just kind of discard that. Well, I'm a property owner. Now, if somebody comes through and they need a new road, I understand that because growth, but you shouldn't be kicked off your land without properly compensated. I've done a lot of property law. I know the experts, and you know what the judge actually is? I'm not the jury. That's one thing I'm not, but I am the gatekeeper to putting proper experts in front of the jury to where a proper jury verdict is reached. And now I'll end with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Waller. With that, we will go on to the next section of our program, which is each of the moderators will ask questions for 10 minutes. And I'm going to start with Mr. Turner. My question is economic development an appropriate reason for eminent domain? In other words, if the land is going to be taken for development or to put in a shopping mall, something like that, as opposed to a public use like a park or a school, is that an appropriate justification for eminent domain?
Well, first of all, if it's a factual determination, which it sounds like you're asking me to do, that would be for the jury. And I don't see myself making fact determinations in those eminent domain type cases. Now, if I was forced to have to do so, I guess I would have to do a balancing test and just weigh in general the benefits versus the detriments to that. I know we have had some economic development issues that have popped up here before, and they didn't get approved. I'm not a real big fan of taking people's land, being born here, raised here. My family was really big on having land, just like Mr. Waller's. And so if you're going to take it, I think that needs to be a jury decision, and also how much that is.
Okay, the same question to you, Mr. Waller, and I know you started to address that toward the end of your opening statement, but if you would take the question, please.
Well, years back, the United States Supreme Court came down with a decision, and I didn't know we were going to ask this type of question, but came down to a decision where they were taking personal property for commercial development as opposed to for the benefit of the city or the county. As a judge, I do not decide what the law is. I have to follow the law. Now, personally, I'll say it like this. They got to follow the rules, both sides. I hold everybody accountable. As a judge, you're not the jury. I agree with Josh Turner 100%. I'm not the jury, but I am the gatekeeper to say who has the right experts, who is qualified under the Daubert standard and our rules of civil procedure, criminal procedure, everything. You're the gatekeeper. So therefore, can a whim of the city or the county just take somebody's property? They better have some case law to back it up for me to do that or even get to that. And one thing I will point out that didn't come up earlier, as a judge, there's a lot more to it than is sitting on the bench and calling balls and strikes. There will be motions over motions over motions. And one thing I have behind me, I have done so much appellate work with our our Mississippi Supreme Court, as well as our Court of Appeals. I'm not going to hand off anything to a law clerk and tell me what the answer is. I might get him pulled some cases, but it better be shepherdized and it better be right. And I read my own briefs and I will make sure the law is enforced. As a judge, and Josh Turner will agree with me, we don't create the law. We can only enforce the law as written. The legislature creates the law. Our Court of Appeals and our Supreme Court interprets what the legislature do. My job is to make sure it's enforced properly, fairly, unbiased, and extremely fairly. I already repeated that one time, but like I said, I don't have a personal opinion on it with respect to other than I am a property owner. And if you want to take my property for a whim, that's not going to happen unless you have a valid case law to prove it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Turner, a very important part of the county court will be the youth court. What would you do as a judge to determine what is in the best interest of a child in a case before you? What do you look for?
Well, the majority of that is driven by statute and certain factors. And I would spend as much time with the guardian ad litem overseeing that case as necessary and reviewing, first of all, what their family situation is, what kind of grades they have and things of that nature. And is this the first time they've ever been in front of me if I happen to be the judge? Youth court has so many different veins that it can run off into, because every child, my experience in youth court's been everybody's got a different problem. Nothing's the same. And I think just being open-minded about what type of rehabilitation can be done for that child needs to be addressed in conjunction with trying to keep that child in a stable family home. And if that's not possible, the other options after that are pretty rough, but to try to keep that child on track would be my number one goal.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Waller, I'll ask the same question of you.
Well, considering I've had to step in as public defender on youth court in Marshall County, and I've seen children that need serious counseling, assistance, and help. My goal as a youth court judge is, and by the way, due to the fact that now we're a county court judge, we will get more state money. We will get more facilities. We will get more help because our staff, and I said this earlier, CPS, DHS is run thin. These kids need treatment. These kids need help. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on youth court. There's simple things that the kid just does not go to school. Well, that's easily fixed. That's not what I'm talking about. As I spoke earlier, I want to make sure the kid that has issues gets proper counseling and he does not turn into a murderer. It's just that simple. I've been in front of, I don't name names. I've been in front of plenty of youth court all the way throughout the state. And I've seen the worst of the worst, and I've seen the best youth court judges throughout the state, from Harrison County to Hinds County, all the way to Marshall County, and of course, Lafayette County. They work their tail off to make sure these kids get the necessary things. My point is, now that we are a county court, we're going to have more avenues and more people involved to help these children. Because my biggest thing is, if you can head off a problem when they're still a minor, they're not going to be sitting in Parchman when they're 18 years old. And that's my biggest goal. And home lives, I can't control that. But when they get in my court, I can get people involved that can help, whether it's a guardian ad litem, whether it's Communicare or any other facility. We can get these kids treated and properly on the right track to where they are very promising, workable, getting trade schools, everything to where they're going to help the population as opposed to hurt the population. So my goal is, yes. And I got a stop sign, so
Okay.
I'll
Thank-
end with that.
And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Don Mason. You're on mute, Don.
I know, I saw that. Doggone it. Okay, sorry. Welcome again to everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all turn out. Okay, start with a very general question. And if either one of you mentioned this already, forgive me if I missed it. But as I understand here in Mississippi, because I didn't practice in Mississippi, but as I understand, you only have, at least at the circuit court level, a very few terms. I guess that's a key concept here in our state. So as the county court, how many terms would you have? Have you thought about this? Have you given that some thought? How many terms would you have? In other words, well, you know the concept. Let's start with you, Mr. Turner. How many terms would you have
None.
each year?
I'd be available 365 days of the year if necessary, especially because of the importance of youth court. I mean, we have to have hearings with, depending on what's going on, within 48 hours for certain things, 30 days for others.
Okay.
And I mean, there won't be any terms. There are certain things that would have to be said at certain times, like appeals, criminal appeals from municipal court and justice court. And, you know, that can be accommodated, but due to the fact that youth court is so important, there's not going to be any terms. I mean, you're a 365 judge.
Mr. Waller?
Some of that may have.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, I'm sorry. I just,
I was gonna say some of that may have to occur by Zoom at times, depending on, you know, where everyone is. But that's my response to it.
okay, Mr. Waller. Do you have a different response? I mean, go
No,
ahead.
I have to elaborate on his response.
Okay.
I agree 100% because, for example, say for example, a minor is incarcerated. We were doing one the other day in Marshall County. We had to do it by Zoom to figure out what was the best interest of the child. And youth court encompasses a lot of different things. Some of these kids are abused. So what do? You try to do the best placement. You can't just let that ride. You're going to be available 7 days a week, 365. I agree with Josh Turner 100% on that one. Now, with respect to terms, are you just talking about youth court or are you talking about in general of county court?
Whatever that term means to you.
Well, here's what it means to me. Our court's going to encompass a lot of things. Youth court takes priority over anything. As far as terms, you can always have a special setting for civil trials, criminal trials. Neither Josh or I will dictate what criminal trials we have. That will be dictated by our 3 circuit court judges. Most of those, of course, you're well aware that is non-capital. It's going to be a lot of drug cases, a lot of violent crimes, but not severely violent. And we will always be able to, going through the circuit clerk, get a jury in there if we need one. I've talked to the Board of Supervisors. We have a small courtroom in the big courthouse on the square, as you're well aware. As well as I've been advised that if we have to use one of the Chancery Court rooms, which are 2, we will be able to find a courtroom if somebody needs to be in court. And that's one thing Josh and I agree with.
Okay.
There will be a place, we're not going to say, just because now circuit court has set terms. So we're not going to be able to take that courtroom when they're doing their terms, they're set by the statute. However, we have plenty of places in Lafayette County to take care of anything that's necessary. Lafayette County is very fortunate. The new Chancery Courthouse, the courtroom in the bottom of the big courthouse on the square, we will be able to handle any matter at any given time. And as far as people like small business owners needs a court trial, we'll get one.
Okay.
I'll be.
Let me, in the interest
Go
of
ahead,
time,
sir.
the time's going to run away from us here. So let me pose another question to you, Mr. Waller. You stated in your opening that you would interpret the law as it is written. Well, we know that oftentimes we're confronted with statutes that are not very clear. So how would, in that case, how would you interpret the law?
Well, I will go back to what I said before. Back in 1984, we had black letter law that had no interpretation on it. So therefore, a lot of cases got appealed to our Supreme Court and our Court of Appeals. And if you're asking about civil cases, they change daily.
I'm talking about interpreting the law, not cases necessarily, just the law. You've got a law before you that you've got to apply somehow and interpret it. And there are different points of view as to what it means. How would you interpret it?
Well, first, I would do research on Westlaw to see what the cases have interpreted first. I'm not going to make an opinion without.
So you're not
looking at
going
the law
to just
first.
read the law and say, well, that's what it says.
Well, as a judge, I'm not a legislator, and I'm not a Supreme Court judge, and I'm not a Court of Appeals judge.
Okay.
We're bound by our oath to follow what the Supreme Court has said in the state of Mississippi, as well as Court of Appeals.
Okay.
So,
Do
am I going to change the law? No, I have to follow the law. That's our oath.
I
Now,
understand.
interpreting, and I'm not following you exactly on interpreting.
Okay.
Is there a gray area in there, if that's what you're asking? Most of our criminal statutes have a range on sentencing. Well, the jury can sentence, or I can sentence.
Okay.
That is where I think you're going at on interpreting. With respect to, say, for example, eminent domain. Well, I'm the gatekeeper on the experts. The jury, and likewise, and this is what I was going at initially, it was like motions. You will have a ton of motions you're going to have to read and make sure that they're interpreting the law the correct way. And that's where I will read it, make sure both sides are on track.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question properly.
Let me jump to Mr. Turner here now, and with a different question. I think research has amply shown that we all, whether we think we do or not, we have implicit biases that affect our actions. How would you, as the county court judge, minimize or eliminate the impacts of those implicit biases on your decisions?
Are you asking me or Mr. Turner?
I'm asking Mr. Turner this time.
Okay.
At least starting with him, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. I think one of the most careful things that any of us could do is listen to the advocates from both sides. If it's a youth court matter, no matter what those implicit biases are, the first thing we've got to do is say, all right, I'm putting that aside, but what's still in the best interest of that child? Now, if it's a criminal matter, again, put those biases aside and deal with the due process issues and the constitutional rights of that person. If it's a civil matter, we are not going to have a whole lot of civil matters that don't require a jury to make those kind of decisions. And I'm a big proponent of a jury making decisions. That is a huge fundamental right that I think is overlooked often. But those are my ways of dealing with those biases.
Okay. Mr. Waller, do you want to respond to that?
Yes. First of all, I will start with the civil trials. And that's why I was going back on the research. Before you ever get to the jury, and there's quite a few lawyers in this state of Mississippi as well as Oxford, Mississippi, there will be tons of motions, and it's not bias. I will follow the law to make sure the trial has merit to go to the jury. Once it goes to the jury, unless there's an evidentiary problem, and that's where also, the biggest judge's role is to make sure the evidence is presented properly by the rules, dot your I's, cross your T's. That is where our role is. Now, as far as personal opinion, completely is not my job. I will enforce the law as written. I will enforce the interpretation by our Supreme Court and our Court of Appeals. And I will follow the objections. And with respect to the youth court, that one correctly is, we will get recommendations from a guardian ad litem of what the best interest of the child is.
I think Dana's about to give me the stop sign. So let me quickly throw it to each of you. If you can give me a quick answer. Why is it you think that our criminal justice system has failed so miserably in achieving rehabilitation? Mr. Waller, quickly, short answer.
Lack of funding.
Okay.
What I've seen in, especially Lafayette's going to be fortunate, but I've seen in a lot of rural counties, we do not have the staff to properly assess these children. I'm talking youth court.
Okay.
We do not have the funds to do that. And these are a lot of courts that don't have a county court. They just have a youth court only.
I want to give Mr. Turner a chance to respond as well, because our time's about up. Mr. Turner?
I 100% agree with Mr. Waller on that. And in addition, you have people that aren't willing to put in the work. But he's right. I mean, 100%.
Well, there's our signal. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. We have some very good questions lined up in the chat. I'm going to start with the last one, and I'm going to ask each of you to try to keep your answers as short as possible so we can get to all the questions. Again, we'll start with Mr. Turner, then go to Mr. Waller. I'm going to start with the last question first. Why are each of you especially qualified for this role?
I'm qualified for it because of my 18 years of experience in all the courts that I listed to you guys from the beginning. Like I said, I've tried cases in circuit court, county court, chancery court, municipal court. Like there's not anything that's going to be occurring that I haven't done before. And seriously, since 2007, I have tried for the last 15 years, I have tried more cases in that courtroom than any other lawyer from start to finish, criminal and civil.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Waller.
I'm a little bit older than Mr. Turner. I've been doing this, I'm on my 29th year. And what's been fortunate about my career is I've been able to not just do criminal work, I've been able to defend school districts, sheriff's departments. I've also been able to take care of cotton farmers. I've been on both sides of everything, and I've done criminal work. Mr. Turner's done criminal work. It takes all of it. The only thing Mr. Turner and I will be able to agree on this one is neither one of us has been an assistant district attorney. So neither one of us has been a prosecutor. And what I'm getting at on that is you got to see the Constitution. Mr. Turner agrees with me on this, I hope. Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. However, as a judge, there will be not any leniency if you're guilty. As a judge, when you have a criminal case, you will have a prosecutor, an assistant district attorney, and you will have a defense attorney that makes a recommendation. As a judge, I can either accept that recommendation if it's fair, or I can assess the maximum penalty if they plead guilty. Having said that, one thing we have not discussed is with heinous crimes, there should be victim impact statements. We're going to get input from the victim. And you asked where that little gray area is, where my input would be, is like the families that got hurt, whether it's a rape case or an assault case, there will be input from them. And that goes to the sentencing phase. Say a jury finds somebody guilty. Then some people, the victim may say, oh, he doesn't need that much. Well, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I will listen to the victims.
Okay.
And that's where the biggest point on a criminal trial is what happens. Now, some victims can't speak for themselves.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the next question. The audience is very active tonight. I want to make sure we get to as many of their comments and questions as possible. So if you want to just wrap up your sentence, and then I'm going to go on to the next question.
You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes missing school is not an easy solution. I have witnessed a mom picking up her child early from school because she had no sitter. Transportation is an issue which is outside the control of the student. What services outside of the correction system, other than Communicare as mentioned, do you intend to use to support youth? Mr. Turner, you want to take that first?
I guess I'm a little confused by the question and what role that youth court should play in this, unless somebody's gotten in trouble. I don't understand the question. I apologize.
That's okay. I will ask the questioner to perhaps clarify it a little bit, and I'll go on to the next question. This is a real life hypothetical based on real life. Two parents have 8 children. A storm blows a branch through the roof of a subpar dwelling. CPS considers inability of an impoverished family to provide decent shelter as tantamount to neglect, and takes the children as an emergency measure without benefit of any order. What is your response? How do you fix it properly?
Not knowing anything. I'm sorry, Tom. I don't know who that's directed towards.
It's you first. And
Okay.
then-
I don't see that as being any type of grave emergency. I would execute an order as fast as I could to make sure that the children got back with their family. They don't appear to be in any danger. It seems to be just a negligible act that occurred. And I don't see that as being some type of emergency to take away children without knowing more.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Waller.
And I agree with Josh Turner on this, because I've never seen that happen in my 29 years of experience, that somebody be removed just because their house got damaged. Negligible acts to me is a child getting not fed, not going to school, getting beating for unreasonable reasons. Just because you have an act of God that damages a house, I have not, in my 29 years of experience, ever witnessed children being taken away.
Okay.
Not in my district and not in this North Mississippi. I've never seen it happen.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here. This is a new court. It will take some time to set up staff and processes. How long do you foresee this initial setup period being before cases can be heard? And we'll start with Mr. Turner.
Thank you. I don't see why I can't start immediately. I'm probably like Mr. Waller is too. I took typing at Oxford High School, so I don't need a whole lot of staff to be able to generate an order and listening to whatever problems there are and generate some type of resolution. I don't understand why I couldn't start the first day.
Okay,
So
thank
I
you.
would intend to do such.
Mr. Waller?
Based upon what I've been told from the staff at the circuit court's office, the third floor has already been renovated for instant access. My understanding, the computer systems are always up and running. I have been a sole practitioner and I worked with firms. I know how to type real well and I know how to use the internet and I know everything. We'll be up running day one. It's just that simple. And as far as I know, Jeff Busby, working with the circuit court judges, have got everything ready for day one once we're sworn in.
Okay, excellent.
Now, with respect to staffing, we will do the interview process once a person is, but I can handle my own calendar.
Okay. This is a follow-up to the question of setting up the staff. How will you ensure that the staff reflects the demographic makeup of the county? And again, we'll start with Mr. Turner.
I don't foresee myself having a duty to do anything other than having the most qualified person, whether it's a male, a female, or someone of any type of other ethnicity than myself, be the person to work with me. I want the most qualified person there that can do the job and works hard. And I don't know that there's a duty to make up any type of particular demographic, but I mean, there's no, I'm about to put my foot in my mouth, but there's nobody in that circuit clerk's office that works harder than Katrina Thompson. I mean, she's fantastic at it. And I mean, everybody, Sonia, works fantastic too on the civil side. And I just don't ever see a time to have to put hey, this person needs to be from this ethnicity or something like that. I want the smartest and best hardworking person.
Thank you. Mr. Waller?
I'm in agreement with this because I only want qualified people. I've been around Jeff Busby's and I know Katrina very well. I want the best qualified. I want someone to make sure my docket is controlled properly. I know where I need to be at any given time. We have calendars. I want to make sure the motions get to me so I can read them promptly and have them heard. And that has nothing to do with race, color, male, female, nothing. Everybody gets interviewed. Everybody gets fairly interviewed. And I just want the most qualified. I'm in agreement with Josh on that one.
Okay, thank you. Now I have a clarification on the question earlier about missing school. The clarification is, Mr. Waller mentioned that missing school has an easy solution. Sometimes there is not an easy solution to missing school. Resources and especially youth services are limited here in Lafayette County. So I believe the questioner is saying that sometimes a child misses school because there is no transportation, there's no babysitter at home, there are extenuating circumstances, and she's just bringing into the conversation that it's not so easy. So that's the clarification. If either of you have a comment.
Go ahead, Tom.
I do, and I do. Josh, you can go first.
Mine's real easy. I think that's a real trivial problem. And if that's just, something that's happened, I don't see the need to punish anybody. I don't see that being, I think that's a waste of judicial time and probably a waste of the child's time and definitely a waste of the parent's time for me or anybody else to have to mess with something like that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Waller.
And as I understand, your question is missing school, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Consider my dad was in charge of the Oxford City School bus shop for over 20 plus years. That's never been an issue. And I'm unaware of the issues of someone not being picked up by a school bus, whether it's Lafayette County Schools or Oxford City Schools. With respect to a parent, and this is where CPS gets involved. For example, we had one in Marshall County the other day, and the parent was given excuses of why the child was not ready when the bus was arriving. Those are the issues that need to be addressed in youth court. So I'm not all for excuses, because I know both the bus supervisors from both Lafayette and Oxford, and I can tell you, they run those routes tight as can be. So I think, and I agree with Josh, those issues maybe needed taken up with the parent as opposed to blaming the school districts, because the buses are on time. And as you are well aware about this county, Harmontown, you got to go to either Marshall County or Panola County to pick up those kids to go to Lafayette County School. So that's a long ride. But I can tell you right now, those both bus directors are very efficient.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Waller. We have another question. Will you consider hiring a mental health professional for youth court? We'll start with you, Mr. Turner.
If the funds are there for it, yes, I'll definitely consider that.
Well, let me expand a little bit. Do you believe there are other professions that can be called upon to help address the issues that arise in youth court, an interdisciplinary approach to cases in youth court?
Absolutely. I think mental health is probably the number one thing that needs to be addressed. And if the funding is there for it to hire a mental health professional, then I think that's a fantastic idea.
Any other professions you can think of?
I think that as long as their mental health is there and, you know, they're still doing well in school, I don't know that what other counseling y'all would like to suggest, but I would always be open to entertaining it if it was for the benefit of the child.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Waller.
As I stated earlier, with respect to counseling, right now we're understaffed. My job will be to make sure I contact the legislature to make sure we have the most funding in Lafayette County that we can have, the most people available, whether it's CommuniCare or another division, to make sure these kids get the right treatment. And you ask kind of whether it's division, whether it's counseling, psychiatrist, psychologist, all I care about is these kids. Because I can tell you right now, if you catch it early, we won't have these kids as felons killing somebody when they're 18 years old. And that's all I've seen so far in my 29 years experience. We're understaffed in that area. And we're going to do everything we can. And Josh is full in agreement. We'll pull in all resources we can to make sure these kids get on the right track, whether they go to a college track or a trade school. They will be in the workforce and going forward and not in trouble.
Okay, what are your views on whether the court as a whole deals effectively with racial and gender bias? And we'll start with Mr. Turner and then go to Mr. Waller.
I guess I'm a little confused by that. I don't, neither race nor gender would come into any play here other than we had to deal with one of the kids and how they were trying to psychologically deal with the problem. But as far as I'm concerned, it won't be an issue at all.
Well, I think the questioner is asking the court as a whole. Is there a systemic issue within the court system that doesn't deal as effectively with racial and gender issues?
There won't be in mine.
Okay, Mr. Waller.
if I'm following your question correctly, first of all, every person that comes in before me, and I'm assuming we're dealing with criminal matters, I'm colorblind to anybody that's going to be before me. The facts are the facts. It has nothing to do with their gender or race or otherwise. It is all about, I don't make the case. Josh Turner does not make the case. The officers investigate the case, then it gets presented to the grand jury, and then the assistant district attorney prosecutes the case. Now, if I'm understanding your question correctly, and this is probably where it's come up the most, is eliminating jurors from the jury pool. Well, our Supreme Court's pretty clear you can't do that. And I'll enforce that to the letter of the law. You cannot eliminate one versus the other. So I'm colorblind when it comes to you're from my court. And
Okay.
the prosecutors will do their case, and I will make sure the evidence is proper. And I said this on the first time we ever spoke at Chancery Courthouse. I hold the sheriff's department, I hold the city accountable just as much as I hold the defense attorneys. Everybody is going to be on a level playing field, and you will follow the rules. You will follow the rules of evidence, and you will have a fair and impartial trial.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, here's another question. If you are elected to be the county judge, how do you see your court working with the school districts to help youth that appear in your court? You want to take that first, Mr. Turner?
It was if elected, what would the county court judge do to interact with the schools?
Yeah, how will you work with the school districts to help the youth that appear in your court?
Having friends and a sister that are school counselors, I will go speak to them first and ask them what needs to be done as far as giving that child the best opportunity to succeed.
Okay, Mr. Waller?
I agree with that. You do have great school counselors. The main thing that will happen in youth court, and so we're dealing with juveniles below the age of 18, CPS will interview them, assess them. The number one thing that youth court is supposed to do with a child, and when I say child, juvenile, is make sure they're still in school. We're not here to lock people up if they don't need to be. They need to be getting their education. They need to be getting that degree. They need to be able to go into society and be very beneficial once they're above 18. Because once you're above 18, you're outside of youth court. I don't have any jurisdiction on that. Now, as county court judge, you have jurisdiction if you commit a crime. We have great counselors in both Lafayette and Oxford. So therefore, yes, I'd absolutely be working with them as well as CPS and working with them. And so therefore, Communicare works with them. They do a plan. And my job as youth court judge, county court judge, is to make sure they don't get lost in translation. Meaning differently, oh, I get ignored. I'm in court and I hadn't seen the guy in 6 months. No, that's not going to happen in my court. They will report back to make sure, how's his kid doing? Not every 6 months. We'll be reporting as fast as we can. Is he improving? What do we need to change so this kid gets on track and is a very productive individual in his life?
Thank you. And I think this is going to be the last question. Do judges have an obligation to improve public understanding of the courts? If so, how should a judge carry out that obligation? Mr. Turner?
Thank you. Our court system, with the exception of youth court, is open to the public. Obviously, youth court being closed during certain matters, that people can't just go walk in and see what's happening during a youth court proceeding. But to directly answer your question, if there's a need for something like that, then yes. Every judge that we've had here, in my recollection, that's ever been asked to go speak at anything to, inform the public has done so. That's chancellors, circuit court judges, municipal court judges, justice court judges. Anytime somebody's asked them to speak, they have, and I would do so too. I don't know that there's a need to have like an annual, this is what we do kind of talk, but I would do that if it was asked of me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Waller.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree in part. Is it on me or not? Okay, thank you. I agree in part. Here's where I look at it. Our court system, and Josh Turner is correct. When it's at our county court level, we're dealing with civil trials, criminal trials. They're wide open to the public unless, for whatever reason, a gag order has to go in place. And that's very, very rare. Now, with respect to youth court, that is extremely private. So you will not know what's going on in there. So as a judge, I will not be able to talk about what goes on in youth court because it is to a minor. Now, also as a judge, by the canons of judicial conduct, I will not be able to comment on my opinion of any given case. We will be bound by those, and we will be able to state, okay, this is the case. Here's a trial date. Y'all can come view it. Now, I think back your question was more drifting to how can we make the public more educated about court system?
Yes.
Well, I'll be free any given day if they want to ask me a question of how things proceed. And that's the reason I'm glad y'all invited us tonight for this open forum, because a lot of people do not know how the court system works. It's kind of a closed network among the attorneys. The general population do not know. People are working. They're not able to just go up there and listen to a court case. And what I will end with on this is the most important thing for our population of Lafayette County, Mississippi, is to exercise their right to be on a jury. I can tell you my 29 years, I've only been on one. You know why? Because I'm an attorney. They don't want me on the jury. But everybody else has a right as a voting citizen of Lafayette County to be on a jury. And I want everybody to be there because that's your duty as a citizen to make sure our jury system goes correctly. You don't want people that don't want to be on a jury to be there. You want people to care about our community and take care of our Lafayette County. Lafayette County has grown since I was in 1968, being born to graduate in high school in 86. It's still a wonderful county, and I want to keep it that way. I want to keep it safe, and I want to make sure our children are taken care of and treated properly, and we're going to bring in all the resources we can to make sure that happens and continues to happen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Waller. I'm just in time. We have run out of our time. So we will now go on to the next portion of our schedule. And that is each of the candidates will have 5 minutes to make a closing statement. And as we have been doing, we'll begin with Mr. Turner. You have 5 minutes and Dana will show you the time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to take all that time. I'm going to tell you all, thank you for having us here. If I don't think that there's anything I have to add in addition to what I told you at the beginning, I will tell you all this. If you have further questions, I will be glad to answer them. You can email me at oxfordlawyer@gmail.com and I will gladly answer them individually. I hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Waller.
I don't have much more to add. And like I said, if you need to call me, I'll give you my cell phone. It's published. It's area code 601-360-1616. I've had that number for 20 years and I haven't changed. You know how with cell numbers they go, why change it? Every time It's a Jackson number, but it's a good old cell number I've had forever. Now, having said that, all I can say is I will be there. You will find me. Like I said, I'll give you a cell number. You will find me if you need a court date, if you need a hearing, if we need a warrant issued, the officers will be able to find me. CPS will be able to find me. I will be available 24/7. And that's what I do with all my clients. So thank you very much for having us on. I hope this is very informative for y'all. And it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Waller. Don, do you have anything to add or raise?
I just want to jump in and thank our candidates again and everyone else for attending tonight. Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody for all 4 sessions. This is the 4th out of 4 sessions. I believe all of them have been very well attended and we've had very good participation. So thank you for helping us bring this information to you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ruby.
Thank you, Joanne. And also I want to say thank you to the candidates, as well as our moderators and our timekeeper, also our co-president Ruth Odell, and all of you as audience members. We appreciate your participation tonight. And we also wanted to let you know that all of the forms have been recorded and they are available on our website. So if you want to go back and review those, like I say, they are on our website, and that information is, the link is placed in our chat that you can access to the link on our website. Also, we want to say that we have really appreciated all of the candidates for their participation. And the League of Women Voters is also sponsoring an additional form. This is in the form of an announcement. As you know, we also have candidates for our Oxford Municipal School District Board. And the candidates have agreed to appear on a form also, and it's going to be on November the 1st. And we would like to invite all the audience and even also the candidates to come back and view these forms as we introduce our candidates. If it's nothing else, and again, we said that date for that form is November the 1st, which is on a Tuesday night, and our time frame will be the same from 6 until 7:30. So again, thank you all for being with us tonight, and we look forward to being with us on that date. And also remember, the election is November the 8th. And again, we say thank you and good night.
Night.
Thank you very much.
Good night.